All right, today we are heading out on a kind of virtual pilgrimage. We're going back in time to ancient Turkey to uncover 7 messages that have been echoing through history for almost 2,000 years. And these weren't just simple letters. No, they were urgent, they were personal, and they were basically prophetic report cards for communities that were standing at a major crossroads.
So I want you to imagine something. You're part of this small, really tight-knit community, and a letter arrives. But it's not just any letter. It's from a leader you deeply respect, a man who's exiled to some remote island because of his faith. And he's claiming that this message, it's a direct revelation from God. I mean, what could it possibly say?
Well, this isn't just a hypothetical scenario. For 7 early Christian churches in what is now modern day Turkey, this was their reality. They got a series of incredibly powerful and personal letters from the Apostle John, who was writing from his exile on the island of Patmos. Now, to really get what these messages are about, we have to try and step into their world. And it was a world of immense social pressure, completely overshadowed by the incredible power of Rome, but also buzzing with this radical new faith. So let's set the scene. We're landing in the last decade of the 1st century. Christianity is still brand new, really, and its followers are kind of caught between the recent memory of their founder and the overwhelming might of the Roman Empire, which, by the way, was becoming more and more hostile. And the single biggest point of conflict was this thing called the imperial cult. You see, to be a good Roman citizen, you were basically required to worship the emperor as a god. Well, for Christians who believed in only one god, this was just an impossible demand, and refusing to do it could cost them everything. Okay, so our journey today is going to follow the original mail routes. We'll start on the coast and then move inland. We're going to unpack the unique challenges and the specific praise for each one of these communities, just like the very first readers would have all those centuries ago. So let's kick off our tour with the 3 big players on the circuit, these coastal powerhouses. Each one was a major hub of Roman culture, commerce, and, you guessed it, pressure. Our first stop is Ephesus. This was a massive, super influential city. It was home to the famous Temple of Artemis, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Now, the church here was doing a lot of things right, but they got a really heartbreaking critique. They got praised for their endurance and for being theologically sound. They were even rooting out false teachers. But all that diligence came at a cost. See, they'd become so focused on being correct that they had forgotten how to love. Their passion, that first spark, had just faded away. It's a timeless warning, right? For any of us who get so caught up in the rules that we forget the whole reason we started in the first place. Okay, so from the tough love for Ephesus, we travel north up the coast to Smyrna, which is modern-day Izmir. And here, the whole tone just shifts completely. Smyrna is one of only 2 churches in the list that gets absolutely no criticism, just pure encouragement. These folks were facing intense persecution. They were poor, but the letter tells them, hey, in the things that truly matter, you are rich. The message wasn't, you need to fix this. It was, hold on, be faithful. Your reward is coming. It's just this powerful message of hope right in the middle of suffering. Now we move on to Pergamum, and whoa, the language here gets incredibly intense. The city is literally called the place where Satan's throne is. So why? Well, Pergamum was a huge center for the imperial cult. It had this massive temple dedicated to the emperor. For the Christians living there, that demand to worship Caesar as a god wasn't just an idea. It was in their face, constant and deadly. So as we journey further inland, following that ancient trade route, the challenges start to change. The intense pressure from the outside world is now replaced by a totally different kind of danger: compromise from within and spiritual decay. You know, the message to Thyatira is so personal. The city was famous for its trade guilds, especially its bronzesmiths. So the letter uses this imagery of Christ having feet like polished brass, which is something the locals would have understood immediately. But their biggest problem was internal. They were tolerating this false prophetess, who gets the nickname Jezebel, and she was leading them to compromise their faith, probably by mixing it in with pagan guild rituals. From Thyatira, we come to Sardis, which gets maybe the most chilling line of all. This city had this glorious past, but it had just grown complacent. And the church there looked good on the outside. I mean, it had a reputation for being alive, but spiritually, it was a tomb. A serious wake-up call to act before it's too late.
Okay, our final two stops present the most powerful contrast of the entire journey. On one hand, you have a church that's celebrated for its unwavering faith, and on the other, a church that's condemned for its useless indifference. So first, Philadelphia. Just like Smyrna, this community gets zero rebuke. They weren't some huge, powerful church, but they were faithful. They held on to what they believed, even when facing hostility. And they were promised this permanent, secure place in God's kingdom, to be made a pillar in his temple. And finally, our pilgrimage ends at Laodicea. This city was loaded. It was wealthy, proud, totally self-sufficient, famous for its banking and its textiles. And its church, well, it had adopted that same exact attitude, which led to maybe the most famous critique in the entire book. You have to understand, the people in Laodicea would have immediately gotten this metaphor. It was a local zinger. See, hot water from the nearby springs at Hierapolis was useful for healing. Cold, fresh water from Colossae was great for drinking. But their own water supply, the stuff that was piped into their city on aqueducts, by the time it got to them, it was this disgusting, tepid, lukewarm sludge. It was spiritually just like that, completely useless, good for nothing. So, after this whole journey through the ruins of these ancient cities and the pages of this ancient book, what are we left with? I mean, what do these messages really say to us now? Well, when we lay them all out together like this, a really clear pattern starts to emerge. Each church was facing its own unique test, right? From loveless orthodoxy and deadly compromise to spiritual death and lukewarm indifference. And in response, every single one of them got a unique promise, one that was perfectly tailored to inspire them to overcome that specific challenge. When it comes right down to it, the struggles of these 7 churches are the timeless struggles of any community of belief. Do we still have our passion? Are we compromising with the pressures of our culture? Have we gotten lazy and complacent in our success? These aren't just first-century questions. They are fundamentally human questions.
And so, the final thought I want to leave you with from this pilgrimage is this. If a similar brutally honest letter were addressed to our own towns, our workplaces, or our communities today, what would it praise us for? And maybe more importantly, what would it tell us we need to change?